And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Aaron. I'm grateful for the house band and all of your wonderful people. I am so glad to see you, and I'm glad to see you uncovered. Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Rick, and it's just always an honor for me to be here. The title for this message is We Are Bruised, but Not Broken. Bruised, but not broken. Everyone has the faith of God. God, by any name that you choose, whether you call it love, God, life, light, infinite intelligence, Mother, Father, God. When I say God, please hear the term you are most comfortable with for ultimate reality. I am speaking about faith in God and the faith of God. So say with me, we have the faith of God. Now say this and point to yourself, I have the faith of God. Our spiritual principle says faith means putting our full confidence, trusting in the things we hope for. It means being certain of things we cannot see. Faith sees the invisible and expects what's incredible. If there is any concern because I am using the word hope instead of the word know, please understand it is by faith that our hope becomes a knowing. Sharon Salzberg, a Buddhist, an author, and a well-known meditation teacher, was 9 years old when her mother died. She went to live with her grandparents. Later, she entered a mental institution. Her life was filled with bruises, but she was not broken. Bruises can be emotional, they can be psychological, they can be physical. But faith overcomes our problems. Knowing with God, I can solve them. See, I'm using the book Practical Metaphysics by Eric Butterworth. Reverend Eric was a significant New Thought author, writer, and minister in the Unity movement. And of course, he comes from Detroit, where I first got my New Thought teaching was actually in Detroit Unity. See, I'm always fascinated when people say, you didn't come from Detroit. People, we don't make up the story that you come from Detroit. Okay, we don't embellish on Detroit. We say we came from the city. You know, I came from San Francisco, but you don't embellish and say, I come from Detroit. You know, so no matter where you come from, just remember this, but God. God makes a way. Some have said the same thing about Jesus. He said, what good thing ever came out of Nazareth? What good thing ever came out of Detroit? Reverend Eric, and hopefully me. Whatever you consider a shortcoming, a limitation, remember, but God. It makes no difference who your parents are, your education, where you come from, problems you have had, mistakes that you have made. Remember, but God. Every time you think of a limitation or someone reminds you of your limitation, remember, but God. Now, that is not the message this morning, but it is probably the sermon. Detroit Unity was where I received my first New Thought teaching. And by the way, Wayne Dyer is from there as well. And later, Reverend Eric held weekly services in Carnegie Hall. He's a very renowned person. God has given us faith. And stated another way, he writes, God has faith in you. God has faith in you. Because of the oneness, our unity with God, there is no separation from God. In God, we possess the power and the potential of God. Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity, wrote, there are 12 spiritual powers in everyone. Spiritual powers are God-given potential within everyone. Love, strength, wisdom, power, imagination. understanding, will, order, enthusiasm, release, life, and of course, faith. We're only going to focus on faith. Faith is your superpower to bring your God-given potential out into your experience. We often say that there's a powerful good greater than we are that we can use. But remember that power is also working in and through us to bring about good. We use this God power. Power is the ability to do, it's the ability to act, it is influence, it is energy. Now, we are in the season where we celebrate freedom. It's full of celebrations about freedom. It's a time of remembrance. It is also a time of gratitude. We celebrate July 4th, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. On June 19th, we celebrated Juneteenth, now a new holiday, and we're thankful for that, that commemorates the end of slavery. Why is a new holiday important? Because we get to celebrate and remember. We get to tell the story that has not been told in the past. Full disclosure, I didn't know about Juneteenth until the holiday discussion actually came up. And if I didn't know, I don't think you knew either. Now, June is Gay Pride Month, which commemorates the Stonewall Riots, which ignited LGBTQ liberation. Now, if you notice my stole, and you notice that it is missing two colors, brown and black for BIPOC, and it is missing pink and blue for trans, please understand it's older than our understanding about how we're all in this together. Yes, everyone is included. June 1st was the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre on Black Wall Street. It was 1921. Deputized white residents of Tulsa declared war and destroyed the Greenwood district, a Black-owned community. Declared war? Yes. They dropped bombs of turpentine from private planes. At the time, Oklahoma was the oil capital of the US. American Indians had assimilated to the American Southern culture, and they owned slaves. Thereby, Black people migrated to Oklahoma as slaves of American Indians, whose land had been confiscated by the government in Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. It was the Indian Removal Act. Gold was discovered in Georgia, and it prompted the Georgia gold rush, and therefore the Indians were in the way. Indian land was an autonomous nation, independent of American government, but they were pushed to Oklahoma before oil was discovered in Oklahoma. It is remembered as the Trail of Tears. 5 independent Indian nations were displaced. Thousands died from exposure, from illness and starvation. And by the way, when the oil was discovered in Oklahoma, the territory was annexed as a state, and the lands were confiscated again, and segregation laws were enacted. When the American Indians were given or driven to this territory, Oklahoma, they took the slaves with them. It is the descendants of these slaves that created the Black Wall Street. Each example is a bruise, and some bruises are actually very bad, and some even leave scars. Full disclosure, these stories of discrimination, of oppression, of racism, and abuse of power challenge my belief system and my philosophy of life. my first response is that it makes me angry. Amen? But God. See, we are not broken from this experience. Faith envisions the freedom. Our freedom is the birthright of every individual. We are free to choose and to create our own experience of life at any point in life. We are fortunate to be on this side of the battle. However, our ancestors and our predecessors committed their lives for our collective freedom, and we remember them in this season. They were bruised, but not broken. They continued in faith. They had faith to overcome anything. They had an inner knowing that freedom would come. Science of Mind and Spirit teaches that we know by faith that there is an invisible intelligence that guides and an invisible law which controls. See, in all honesty, you really can't blow it. Faith recognizes that it is the God in you that does the work through you. An invisible intelligence guides, and an invisible law controls. Love points the way, and the law makes it possible. By the allness of God, whatever your it is, it will work out. You will overcome. All of it is just bruises. Nothing's broken. Life is full of bruises, but we're just not broken because we have the faith of God. Faith that overcomes anything. Now, faith has two directions. We have faith in God and we have the faith of God. When we have faith in God, often our faith is directed towards something that we want to happen, often outside of ourselves. But faith is also of God. And when it is of God, this is this gift that is given to us. It is your superpower and how we navigate life's journey. Faith of God is how we live and move and have our being in God. It's how we can be bruised, but we're not broken. It is an inner knowing that we have the faith of God, a knowing that that invisible intelligence guides and the invisible law which controls. Consider this God power of faith is like electricity. It's always flowing, circulating, but you don't see it until you flip the switch. The buzz and the hum of the electricity is always there, but we have learned to ignore it. Flipping the switch is the recognition that God is centered in you. The recognition that faith is from God, and I want you to flip the switch this morning. Flip the switch that God is centered in you, and by faith it resides in you. But you need to know it. We don't learn. If we don't learn, we will ignore it. For example, Juneteenth is an example because slavery was declared ended and unconstitutional in 1863. But it was 1865. It took 2.5 years for the news to reach Texas. It didn't arrive until the Union Army arrived in Texas. They were free and had power to leave, but they didn't know. They remained slaves 2.5 years longer because they didn't know. We have the faith of God, and God has faith in us. Do you know that you are the center of God's presence? Do you know that you are the center of God's presence? See, faith has already been given. It is a gift. We are created in God's image and likeness, and the faith that God has given us is the highest faith possible. But it doesn't vary between people. I don't have any more faith than anyone else. It's all a gift. But it is by using this faith and understanding that we are the center of God's presence that faith grows. We have an inner power for this journey of life that is often filled with bruises and disappointments, but we are not broken. Are you bruised but not broken? Are you bruised but not broken? Say with me, I am bruised, but I am not broken. Faith is not making God work for you, convincing God to do it. We don't earn a faith badge. God is present in you as you. Faith is not changing reality, but it is about changing our perspective. We learn that the challenge is an opportunity for God to be revealed through us. There are facts in our lives, but they are not truth. Facts are temporary. Truth is eternal. Faith is not information. Information does not override a habit. We must choose the habit of placing all of our attention in the good and away from the bruise. Developing a habit of focusing our attention on God, on the good in everyone. Yes, in everyone, even the people we don't like. Yes, even the people who drop the bombs. Remember, if it's not good for you, let it go. We don't get extra points for living or choosing to live in suffering. We do not overcome by willpower. It's not by willpower, it is by habits, spiritual practices. Willpower will be eaten up every time by a habit. One reason 12-step works, of any type of 12-step works, is because there's a development of new habits. We are not totally relying on new information and willpower. Neurosciences have taught us and documented that the brain changes when we create new habits. The size of the brain grows in the area associated with your habit. We must develop the habit of looking for God, the good in everything and in everyone. It is not a habit if you have to remind yourself about it. If you see someone and you think not the best about them, it has not become a habit yet. If you have to remind yourself, it is not a habit. The habit of prayer and meditation changes our brain. It makes us more resilient. It strengthens us inwardly. Our creativity blossoms, and we can see the good even when it's dim. Faith is, though, an inner knowing, that being certain that the things we cannot see, that we hope for, will come to pass. Sometimes believing in something that just does not make sense. The hope that we have to experience our potential, the potential that was given to us. It is an inner passion, the idea, the dream that just will not go away. Potential never runs out. There is always more potential in you. Regardless of your bruises, there is more potential in you. There is no limitation to potential. It is limitless. Faith is knowing that despite the appearance of lack of limitation or difficulty, we hold to this divine idea, an inner knowing, which is the faith of God, and the evidence of our desire. How does faith grow? Faith grows as it's developed in us. So we have to develop a new habit. Our ability to reach our potential is by assessing that we are responsible for our own conscience. The oppression in the story in the Trail of Tears did not make me angry. I can decide not to stay angry, even if that was my first response. How faith develops is by practice. Isn't it always practice? I wish somebody would make a universal pill that would take care of it all, but it doesn't work that way. We have to practice. It's always practice. We have to practice faith, that all things are possible. It be it unto you as you believe, that your faith has made you well. The good, the inner knowing comes through you. If you want to evolve, it's your choice. The golden key is don't think about your problem. Focus your attention on the allness, on the sufficiency of God. Not out there, but in there. The allness that is within each one of you. Don't worry about the disease. Focus on the health of God. If God is healthy, so is God's presence in you. God's loving and abiding presence. God will do for you what? How God will do it through you. Don't forget, bruises are temporary. Don't focus on the bruise. Focus on your desire. Follow the inward call and the knowing. Don't give up on yourself, on a loved one, on leaders, or people in authority. Be optimistic. We should be the most optimistic people in any room. Edison, who created the light bulb, had 300 opportunities to get it right. But he had an inner knowing, and it took every one of those bruises until he finished the inner calling. Have you finished your inner calling? Faith grows by being you and allowing your inner desire, your potential, to blossom. Don't believe that anyone is called to do something that they are not empowered for. You have been given the potential for your calling. If called, you have been given the potential through faith. If you feel you need to fix yourself, just stop. We fix ourselves by letting the light of God come through us. Have faith that God has faith in you. It's not a one-time opportunity or one-time experience. It grows. Sharon Salzberg found meaning in her bruises after living 3 years in India studying Buddhism. In her book, Faith, she writes, faith is trusting your own deepest experience. The experience is the inner knowing. She was bruised but not broken, knocked down but not knocked out. And we may be knocked down but not knocked out. By faith, we just get up. We take a licking and we keep on ticking. Knowing by our inner confidence and trust that God will make a way through us, even when there is no way. Our spiritual principle says that faith means putting our full confidence, our entire trust in the things that we hope for. It means being certain of the things we cannot see. We know by faith that there is an invisible intelligence that guides and an invisible law that controls. We are not doing this on our own. It is God in us. You cannot blow it, but you can ignore the gift. Daily practice to reach this inner knowing is important. Remember where God has led you. Remember the blessings that you have experienced in your life. Acknowledge that you need God's help. And remember that the bruises do not break you. They are healed. Develop a new habit. Having faith in the faith that God has in you. Who else needs to believe in you other than God? Do you need anyone else? No. Having faith in the faith that God has in you. To have this complete confidence, trusting in the things that we are able to do. The potential is always there. It is the hope that is within us. It is the gift. It is the proof that God is in us. Develop a habit that God is centered in me. When thoughts of failure or limitation rise, say to yourself, God is centered in me. Say it with me. God is centered in me. Every day, say, God is centered in me. Let it be so, and so it is. Let us pray. I have a faith that sees the invisible, expects what's incredible. It receives the impossible. Faith can overcome anything. Faith to know that God can solve every problem we have through us. We have the faith to overcome anything. Faith to reach what we consider unreachable and to remove what we consider unmovable. Faith can overcome anything, and so it is.